Hey, what's happening? What's poppin', everybody? Today you got the BBC King here facing off Gypsy King in the NPL Finals, the most competitive league format on YouTube. This season, we've done a lot, we've accomplished a lot, but we may have not been the absolute dominant force like, Matty Brogg 6-0 people left and right, but we were able to make it to finals, and we're facing Gypsy King, one of the best format league players, and he was a finalist last season. He is probably the favorite of this game, and we have something to prove. We may not be the absolute best, but we have to bring everything that we got. As this is going to be the team builder, this is not the actual game, so if you came here for the game, make sure to watch the next video. But here is all going to be about how can I bring the best sets versus Gypsy. There's no holding anything back. In the regular season, I might shy off from a couple sets. I'm not bringing my absolute best team in the regular season, but now that we're in finals, this is it. This is everything that I got, and I'm showing you guys what a finals team looks like. So if you're interested in getting better in league format, if you're interested in seeing what a finals team is supposed to look like in the NPL, this is how it's done, at least how I do things. So I'm going to be doing something very, very similar to 6 Foot Hacks, where he projects 6 bonds and what kind of sets are going to have and how is he going to play around that. And except I'm going to be doing it for Gypsy's entire roster. So basically I'm going to be cutting off my head. I'm going to be slapping my brain onto the computer screen, and you guys are going to see everything that I pretty much my entire thought process through it all. So further ado, let's get into this builder. So first and foremost, versus Gypsy, he is somebody who loves Mega Gardevoir. This is definitely, there's 4 mons that I know Gypsy King's gonna bring. All right, there's gonna be Mega Gardevoir. That's his round 1 pick. This is something that he's brought to every single game. This is something that has done a lot of work for his team, and it has a very, very good matchup versus me. So for example, it outspeeds everything on my entire roster except it speed ties with Mew, and it Thundurus does outspeed it. Offensively, between Hyper Voice, Psychic, and Thunderbolt, it can pretty much 2 KO everything on my entire roster. So Gardevoir is 100% coming. Now it's going to be a match, early on in the game. I have not faced Gypsy, but my game plan in facing the Gardevoir is what kind of Gardevoir is he. Realistically, he's going to bring something of these sets that I placed on to Showdown. These are more of the sets that I expect. So for example, I think that he could bring a timid max speed 3 attacks Gardevoir, but historically Gypsy has brought a fatter Gardevoir, and this makes a lot of sense. Now I don't know what speed tier he wants to hit with Gardevoir, but it can range between something like 32 speed EVs to all the way to outspeeding Adamant max speed Zygarde. So as far as his coverage moves, let's go into that. So his coverage moves 100% is going to bring Hyper Voice. This is going to be his general stab. This OHKOs things like Zygarde, and this is something that he's going to be clicking most of the time, is Hyper Voice. So next is he going to bring I expect him to actually bring 2 coverage moves, not all 3. He could bring regardless if he brings Psychic or Thunderbolt, those are his other options for coverage, as my Hyper Voice switch-ins are things like my Volcanion, or things like my Roserade, and things like my Celesteela. So regardless if he brings Psyshock or Thunderbolt, Volcanion is not a very reliable Gardevoir switch-in. So it leaves to, does he want to be a little bit weaker to Celesteela and bring dual stabs to make sure he hits something like Roserade, or does he not see Roserade coming and he just brings Hyper Voice and Thunderbolt to make sure he can hit the Celesteela, as Celesteela is a lot better switching to Gardevoir, as Roserade is not a Psyshock switch-in, for those who don't know that. So the next move that I definitely see is something like a Wish Encore set. So if he's not Wish, then he's probably some like really fast set, but he could be something like Calm Mind. But Gypsy has only brought like Calm Mind once versus Abe, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. But we'll kind of scout how things go out. So I think that he's more likely to bring probably like Hyper Voice T-Bolt, or he could be Hyper Voice Psyshock. I expect Wish, and the last move is probably going to be Encore slash Calm Mind slash... I don't really see Taunt coming. I think Encore is a little bit better than Taunt. I will scout for them both. And the reason why I think Encore is a little bit better is it helps versus my setup mons. So Encore, if he switches into a Curse-Lax and he doesn't bring something like a Doublade, he can, easily Encore my Snorlax into something like a Curse, or he can Encore me into Rest. And if I'm Cursed, then I'm not Adamant Choice Band, and he can, if I do go for a turn that particular turn, if he predicts me to go for Curse, that's best case scenario for Gardevoir, but he could suspect me for going for a Curse that turn, or even if I were to return, then Gardevoir can live any one hit, especially if it's fat, then he can just Encore. The other thing is, if I have Calm Mind or Bulk Up Mew, he can just Encore that all day of the week, as Gardevoir always beats Mew unless Mew is a very specific tailored set to beat Gardevoir. As if it needs coverage, then I need specific coverage for Gardevoir. Now if I were to bring some sort of Calm Mind Mew or Nasty Plot Mew, I would need coverage for ground types, as he has triple poison, and especially the Muck. I need my Mew to always beat the Muck, because Muck has the ability to either set up or trap or pursuit trap, and I don't know, it could do a lot of things, and I don't want my Mew to be extremely weak to the Muck. Not that I think Muck is coming or not, and Mew is not really easily pursuit trapped, but in any note, he could bring something like a really fat Gardevoir like this. So this kind of Gardevoir allows him to maybe EV it, so he avoids a plus 1,000 arrows from Zygarde after +1. As Zygarde is a massive threat versus him. Now you think, oh, he has a Shaman. Shaman always walls Zygarde. The problem is Zygarde is my Z move mon, and it has access to Z Outrage. And it also has Dragon Dance. So if I Dragon Dance into Z Outrage, Shaman is taking upwards to 80%. It's taking around 80% if it's absolute max defense, max HP. So if you have a really fat Gardevoir, you can check things like a DD Zygarde a little bit better. So that's the logic between Gardevoir. So next mon is definitely coming is Infernape. The reason why Infernape is 100% coming is because he has the ability to bring something like Choice Band, Life Orb, or Z Move, and I don't have a mon that can switch into its dual stabs, as the things that switch into close combat, Mew, and so I only have 4 potential Infernape switch-ins. That's Mew, that's Volcanion, that's Cofagrigus, and that's Zygarde. But Infernape has the ability to 2-hit KO all 4 of them. Like for example, Mew you would think is the best out of the 4, but if I bring Absolute Fizz Def or enough to avoid, like if I bring Fizz Def to avoid Banded Infernape's Flare Blitz, then he could bring Life Orb Fire Blast, and vice versa. I bring Spadef, he's more likely to bring physical Infernape, because the risk of special Infernape is missing Fire Blast, missing Focus Blast. That's not really something you want to risk in a finals game. He might have to go that route, but you never know. There is a little bit risk of running physical Infernape, because it does take recoil. The defense boost, the defense drops don't really matter for Infernape, because Infernape's not really ever going to should be taking a hit. And also, if he's Choice Banded, he can run something like U-Turn. He can run things like Mach Punch that helps Trick Room Snorlax a little bit better. Now the thing is that he could be any set. He could be freaking Sash Endeavor and Fernape. These, in my opinion, are the strongest sets. And the thing is if he is not, you know, this kind of Infernape, if he's not this kind of, you know, if he's not defensive Shaman, if he's not this and that, I can utilize and I can, you know, punish maybe not so good sets. I'm more so building the absolute best sets he can bring versus me, the more logical sets too. And I'm also, you know, going over possible EV spreads and move pools to get a better understanding for you guys and myself during the building. So next mon is going to be the Shaman. The reason why you think Shaman would be coming is because this is only like real 1000 arrow switch-ins, and Zygarde has been my bread and butter for the past like 3 weeks or so. Matty Brawlick, if I won a 50-50, I won the game. Jolt, it pretty much swept Jolt for the most part. Togavor, literally 6-0 Togavor. So it's the same Dragon Dance Zygarde set that I keep bringing every single week. That is the best, you know, Zygarde set. It's obviously Dragon Dance, and it's very, very threatening. So the thing with Gypsy is he's a very, very good player, and I know he's aware of these things. He watches my games, and I know he's going to prepare versus DD Zygarde. Now, I'm not sure exactly how he's going to do this, but his only possible ways he can do this is either a random Choice Scarfer and Choice Scarf Zapdos, Choice Scarf Shaman, and Choice Scarf and Fernape. I don't know how reliable Choice Scarf and Fernape is for revenging Zygarde, but I don't know. Those are his potential options, and also absolute max defense Uxie, but then again foul play, because Uxie does have foul play, but that's not like incredibly reliable. So he only has so many options. It's Gardevoir can potentially be EV to live 1000 arrows, and then obviously Hyper Voice kills me off, or he brings absolute max defense, max HP Shaman, and he always puts himself out of range of +1 outrage, Z outrage, and he potentially creates a 50-50 between Shaman and Gardevoir there. So as far as Shaman's coverage goes, Seed Flare, Leech Seed, Synthesis 100% coming. It's just whether is he going to bring HB Ice to be able to 2-KO the Zygarde? Is he going to bring something like Air Slash to hit my Mega Heracross? These are all things that I'm just going to scout out depending on his team structure and how, you know, I pretty much only can know based on his plays and if he reveals them as there's really no other coverage moves that he's gonna run other than Air Slash and HB Ice, because my my grass resists are things like Roserade, which get chipped by HB Ice, but Air Slash hits a little bit harder, but HB Ice hits my Thundurus for super effective damage, as Thundurus is kind of a big, and this could be a Thundurus, one of his Thundurus checks, and that does chip away at Thundurus a little bit with HB Ice, where Seed Flare is potentially can miss, and HB Ice is safe and hits harder. So I really expect something like this, as once again he absolutely needs max defense, max HP in order to effectively check something like my Zygarde. So next mon is going to be the Goodra. 100% expect Goodra to come because I don't have a Fairy type, and because of that he can bring always Assault Vest. But the thing is that people always bring Assault Vest, but the problem is like that is kind of walled by Mew to an extent. But you're gonna like pretty much, if you're a Choice Specs or if you are a Choice Goodra, if you're a Choice Scarf, you outspeed everything on my team and revenge things like Thundurus. If you're Choice Specs, you literally just click Choice Specs Draco, have, you know, no second thoughts, like, you know, there's no downplay. Even if I go to sell Stela, I'm risking T-Bolt. Even if I'm Walk On, I get 2 KO'd obviously by T-Bolt, and Specs Draco still 3 KOs sell Stela. So yeah, very good move. You know, obviously Sludge Wave, just in case I bring Savali, Fairy, and then Toxic to like Toxic the Mew if it gets annoying. I don't know. I mean, he could run maybe even Dragon Tail too, Specs Dragon Tail, which is kind of weird. I'm not saying he could bring Specs, this is just one of his potential sets. Another potential set is going to be the Curse set. So the curse set is Dragon Tail, Curse, Rest Talk, Udra. As what this is going to allow him to do is my Dragon Resist or my Dragon Check is Celesteela. He can just detail that out, and Celesteela is essentially setup fodder, especially if you're something like Sap Sipper. I can't Leech Seed you, and yeah, you just set up +6 on Celesteela and then just Dragon Tail me out. And if I try to go Heracross as he sets up a curse, I'm also risking him going for a Dragon Tail, as Mega Heracross hits Goodra really strong, but it, always risks going for a Dragon Tail. So, Choice Specs or Curse, Goodra are the stronger sets, I believe, than Choice Band. I mean, he could bring Choice Band Goodra because it hits something like my Snorlax a little bit harder, even Spadef Mew a little bit harder, but then again, I don't know, I guess it doesn't have a super effective hit versus something like my Celesteela. But then again, Superpower still does a pretty good chunk. But I just think something like a Choice Specs is a little bit stronger. So so these are his potential 4, right? These are 100% coming. The last 2 are going to be kind of a toss-up. I think Zapdos is the 5th 100% coming Mon, because Zapdos is his bread and butter. Zapdos is something that he's traditionally had in Lake format a ton. It has a pretty good matchup versus me, and it's just one of his better Mons. So it's not really a Mon that he absolutely needs to bring, but it has a pretty good matchup versus me, and it can do a lot for him, but he doesn't need it for any particular thing. So that's kind of why I left it out. He may or may not bring Zapdos. It's like an 80% bring in my eyes, but you never know. Next Mon that I see coming though, these are going to be Uxie or Dugtrio, because you're going to bring a Stealth Rocker, because I have Volcanion, Thundurus. Stealth Rocks are always good, and I don't have a really good reliable way to get rid of Stealth Rocks, and I don't really know which one's more likely, Dugtrio or Uxie. I think it's honestly a toss-up, because Dugtrio, you could either bring Life Orb. If you bring Focus Sash Dugtrio, it's solely because you want to be safe. It's because you can live any one hit and you always guarantee you get up your rocks, and you outspeed the entirety of my team. The problem with Focus Sash Dugtrio is that it misses an Oko on my Mega Heracross if you have Aerial Ace. It misses an Oko Stone Edge versus Thundurus. It misses, Tuakeo trapping, I don't know, certain things. So I think a boosting item is going to help him a little bit more for those specific scenarios, as he can either go Life Orb or Choice Band. Choice Band Stealth Rocks is kind of weird, but he can set up Stealth Rocks. He might, like, for example, if it's Thundurus versus Dugtrio, he may know that I'm going to switch out because I don't want to take a Stone Edge, and he can just set up his rocks, switch out, and then he's not choice locked into Stone Edge anymore. And then you could always click Earthquake or Aerial Ace, and there's a couple things that he can trap. Like, he can trap Roserade if I bring it, he can trap Volcanion, he can trap, if I'm not Shed Shell, he can trap Stunfisk, like choice banded EQ, potentially can one-shot Stunfisk depending on the set. So I think either Choice Banded or Life Orb is a little bit. Life Orb is, if you don't want to be like choice locked. See, the problem with bringing Choice Band to Trio and having like Stone Edge is like you're leaving yourself a little bit open to DD Zygarde. So if you're Life Orb, you just Memento out. You don't know, obviously I'm not going to bring Heracross in on Trio because you didn't reveal Memento. And this Memento could be Aerial Ace. So, but he could also bring Aerial Ace to once again trap the Heracross, but we'll kind of see how things go. Next is going to be Uxie. I don't have a Dark type, so he could bring. I think if he brings Dugtrio and Uxie, that means Uxie is some sort of like weird set. Weird as in something different, not rocks. As Dugtrio, so he has 3 potential Stealth Rockers, right? Stealth Rock's Infernape. That, in my opinion, is inferior. Infernape is a Stealth Rocker, but these are better Stealth Rockers, and you're leaving your best Wall Breaker to be a Stealth Rocker. That just doesn't make sense. But something like Uxie, you know, very standard set, you know, something maybe, you know, EVs on Uxie to outspeed whatever he wants. Because Uxie is so fat, it doesn't really need to invest, you know, max HP, max defense, max HP, max whatever. I don't know what EVs he wants to play around with this Uxie. Probably expect like a crap load of speed. I don't know what speed tier he wants to hit. But move pool, 100% if he's like this, some sort of rocks Uxie is rocks. Could bring foul play for something like Zygarde, Psychic or Psyshock for general stab, mostly for Heracross, and then some sort of status move for Mew, or just, you know, just getting off a Toxic on anything is pretty solid. But he could bring another set, which is Calm Mind, Psychic, Rest Talk, as, once again, I don't have a Dark type, so he could bring something like that that can beat certain variants of Mew, and he has brought that similar Uxie set before, so that's something I also need to prepare for. So he's got couple potential Uxie sets depending on his team of 6 that I gotta look out for. But if Uxie is his only potential Stealth Rocker, if it looks like a lizard, it is a lizard. So yep, next is gonna be I'm pretty confident that Zapdos is coming, but the different Zapdos sets that he could bring is very, very wide. Like, he can bring, in my opinion, like 4 different Zapdoses, but I'm not saying this is the most likely, but this is probably going to be ballpark Zapdos is what he's going to have. So I don't think he can afford speed on something like Shaman, but he can afford speed on Zapdos. A Zapdos still avoids, you know, Okos, 2 KOs from the things that it needs to without having to run max bulk. And Zapdos has the potential to speed tie or outspeed everything on my team. So they kind of said that you know, Gypsy's gonna have Thunderbolt Roost 100% if he brings Zapdos, but then the last, you know, he can have like a couple other filler moves. He can, well, not exactly filler moves, but he can have Air Cutter. Air Cutter ensures that he OHKOs something like my Mega Heracross, and Air Cutter is Stab, which hits my Roserade harder. If he carries HP Ice for, once again, so he's not set up fodder for Zygarde, the HP Ice doesn't quite hit, you know, Roserade for a 2 KO. So if I'm like bulky Synthesis Roserade, I can potentially 1v1 the Zapdos as, well, I mean, they just kind of like stall each other out. And Zapdos does have pressure, so actually, technically, Zapdos can beat Roserade with HP Ice, but Toxic is another set that he could bring on Zapdos, as with Toxic, you can Toxic things like my Mew. Yes, you get synchronized, but if you don't have a good answer to kill Mew, then that can be very good. And, you know, getting a Toxic off on Zygarde, you know, puts that thing on a timer, which is pretty good for, you know, obviously for not getting swept and things like that. And I really don't expect, he could bring, you know, Substitute as well. He brought like Sub-Toxic. He could bring like Sub-Toxic Roosts, Thunderbolt maybe? I don't know. I mean, that's a little bit set up fodder versus Zygarde, but he does have, I don't know. He can bring a couple wild sets, but something like this is something that I'm expecting. Not exactly sure what speed tier he wants to hit, but I think he's going to speed create something like Volcanion, so he could outspeed it, hit it with a Thunderbolt, and knock me out. And he can just outspeed something like Heracross, and this speed stat is, I think the ranges of speed tiers of my team, I think Adamant Zygarde is a speed tier that he wants to hit, because if I'm Jolly Zygarde, that's one, ridiculous for me to bring Jolly Zygarde versus him, because like what is Zygarde Jolly Zygarde outspeeding? Like Uxie, like his speed ties with Uxie, like that's pretty. And I miss Adamant damage, which I need all the damage that I need for things like Shaman and stuff like that. I think that would be a little ridiculous. So I think like 290 is going to be a speed stat that he's probably going to hit, but we'll see as the game. I haven't played Gypsy, so we'll see. Next mon that he could have is Scolipede. I think I'm most scared of Scolipede than everything else on his team, not because of Scolipede, the actual mon, but what it can potentially do to help the rest of his team. So like Mega Gardevoir is scary, but Mega Gardevoir plus Scolipede is scarier because Scolipede can baton pass speed into that. I think Mega Gardevoir is the only mon that really wants to benefit from speed boost, realistically. So I gotta watch out for that. But another thing Scolipede can do is be a lead spikes Scolipede. I think this is gonna be, if he brings Scolipede, it's gonna be something like this because he can afford speed pass. He can afford speed into protect and baton pass in a Gardevoir and have spikes with this set. You know, he only needs like one coverage move, I guess. And you know, Scolipede just baton passes out versus Zygarde and just kind of goes from there. And yeah, this is, I think, is the most effective set. Now the item, he could be the Figgy Berry or one of those like weird berries with Scolipede to not die from Rock Blast. If he leads off with Scolipede, I lead off with Heracross. He only will be able to get up one spike if I lead off with Heracross and then hit him with a Rock Blast. But unless he's the berry, then he can get up 2 spikes, and then yeah, that would be pretty good. Or a spike and a baton pass. Yeah, so, but as far as the sweeper Scolipede, I do not expect that. I have a Coffer Grigas that 100% walls a Scolipede and 2 KOs with Shadow Ball, and I have a Celesteela that, you know, 100% walls a Scolipede too. So I don't really expect an offensive Scolipede to come versus me. Or if he is offensive, it's something like, you know, it's not a Swords Dance 3 attacks, it's some sort of like 1 coverage move, this shenanigans, and I don't know. But anyways, the next mon, I think this is probably a toss-up between Toxapex or Zapdos. Maybe, because what Toxapex, I don't really expect Toxapex, Doublade, or Muk to come, but if Toxapex were to come, it does serve a couple purposes. One, mainly, it gives him, no matter what, Toxapex can always pivot into Heracross. It's not exactly the Heracross counter, because Heracross can 2-KO Toxapex with Earthquake, unless he's Shuca Berry. I think Shuca Berry is his best item, and I'll kind of go over why. But Toxapex, it gives him a Toxic Spike user, which he can, even if I do bring Roserade, he can still put up spikes, and he could potentially get up, he can still potentially get up T-Spikes, and he forces my Roserade to absorb them. Or he just kills Roserade, and then he gets up spikes later on in the game, which can help. Scald, I don't really, he can bring Scald or Ice Beam, I'm not really sure. Really what helps him a little bit more. Scald does Scald Burn, the Zygarde, Heracross, things like that. But I have a Water Absorb user, and I don't know. It's really undetermined what kind of coverage move he brings. But Haze, he can either bring Shuca Berry or Red Card. Red Card's kind of weird, but basically if Zygarde sets up a +1, Toxapex with a Shuca Berry can Haze, and he can just, Toxapex is like a safety net. In case Zygarde gets out of control, Toxapex always stops Zygarde 1 time, as it can live a +1000 arrows. I'm pretty sure even if I'm Z-move 1000 arrows, but then Shaman would wall if I'm Z-move 1000 arrows. And it can guarantee just haze me until I die, and then you revenge with whatever, you know, Zapdos, whatever you have the mon to outspeed Zygarde. And as I said, it can at least pivot into the Shaman. He can at least pivot from the Mega Heracross. Another Mega Heracross switch in is Doublade. I think this is a little bit less likely, but Doublade also gives him a Curse Lax check, as Curse Lax is pretty good versus him if he doesn't bring Doublade, because he only has Infernape to check it, and if I set up a couple curses, or if I predict Infernape to switch in and I click return, Infernape's dying. So that's really cool. Yeah, Doublade can avoid he's probably gonna avoid his Doublade to avoid a 2-KO from Earthquake maybe. Or I'm not really sure exactly what kind of Dew Blade set or EVs he's gonna run, but it's gonna be similar to this. Shadow Sneak, Stab, especially if he's like Sword Stance Shadow Sneak, makes a lot of sense. He could be Shadow Claw too. Aerial Ace he needs because I have a Mega Heracross and this is a Mega Heracross like counter. Well, it's supposed to be at least. And then Secret Sword checks the other thing that Doublade checks, which is Curse-Lax. If Curse-Lax sets up to you +6, you always Sacred Sword to, do over 50% to Snorlax to KO me. As this does ignore stat boosts. And Sword Dance or Toxic or, Shadow Claw could be the last move. Just depends on what he wants to do there. I don't know, does this thing get Foul Play? You could have like something sneaky for Zygarde too. And then Muck, I think it is the least likely Mon. But Muck can come as it does serve a couple roles for his team. One, it absorbs T-Spikes from Rose Raid. Two, it gives him a Salt Vest user if he does want to go Salt Vest to check Thundurus, to check Volcanion, to check certain, Nasty Plot Mew, to check, because you can live an Earth Power if you're a Salt Vest, even after +2, checks the Rose Raid. So he could bring something like a Salt Vest Muck. He could bring, the Curse Muck that he's brought last time. He had Mean Look over Sleep Talk. And if my Mew could potentially get trapped versus the Muck, so I gotta watch out for that. So, he could be the Gluttony Berry, Gluttony Figgy Berry, whatever. So he could go, something like that, something a little wild, but I think there are so many more better Mons and more cases, but it just, if you need Muck for a very, very specific purpose, and I can see it coming, but I kind of went over everything. I just think other things are just better than the Muck, unless he's specifically weak to Nasty Plot Thundurus, etc., etc. For whatever reason, doesn't bring Goodra. So let's go over my team real quick. My team is gonna be made after looking at all the potential things he has. Looking at everything that he can bring versus me, I decided I'm gonna start off with this Thundurus. And what this is gonna, I'm gonna have Puncture ability. So the first thing that I'm thinking about is Fly. The reason why I'm thinking I want to build a team around Fly Thundurus is because if you look at his quote-unquote Thundurus checks, so his Thunderbolt switch-ins, like trio, it's gonna be Gardevoir and Goodra and Shaman, kinda. I mean, Shaman kind of sucks as a Thundurus check, but you'll see what I mean later. Gardevoir pretty much can live things like Sludge Waves, and if he's like invested, Gardevoir can knock me out, or if rocks are up, he might be able to knock me out. And Goodra is just really, really fat. Goodra lives Thunderbolts, HB Ices, Sludge Waves. Goodra's really, really fat. And I am going to carry the Fly to hit things like Gardevoir and Goodra because I am Flyanium Z. So this is, looking at his team is a little bit, his team is naturally kind of weak to Nasty Plot Thunder. Like if I'm Dual Dance Thundurus with like HB Thunderbolt, HB Ice, Dual Dance, I outspeed the Drug Trio, kill him with HB Ice, I Thunderbolt, pretty much everything else, and if I chip the Goodra, I set up a +2 and then kill it with the HB Ice. But Gypsy's never going to allow me to do all that, but I think he's aware of something like that as a possibility. So that's why Shaman also can be a Thundurus check if I don't have something like Sludge Wave, as I am carrying. So Sludge Wave is a must bring too, because it does get very, very good chip on Gardevoir. Sludge Wave into Fly kills any, well, unless Goodra is like max, so max HP Goodra, I think max HP Goodra is 90% chance to die to Fly. So yeah, Sludge Wave plus Fly does knock out the Goodra. Is that's really, really good for me. Gardevoir, if almost every single Gardevoir dies to Z-Fly, pretty much all Gardevoir dies to Z-Fly. As the investment, I do have 164 as that is for the EVs. The EVs in attack are specifically to just knock out the Goodra if I do get up a spike. And I invested 160 EVs and special attack. Obviously I have Thunderbolt, which is general stab. These EVs on Thundurus allow me to a KO Shaman with Sludge Wave after a spike. As I'm bringing spikes, I'm not bringing rocks. You'll see my team later. But obviously the rest is going to be in speed. I'm going to be a minus defense nature, as this allows me to, take something like HP Ice is better from Shaman, takes a Hyper Voice from Gardevoir, etc., etc. So, Thunderbolt. So the last move that I end up putting on here, because I'm Prankster, I could have been Defiant. The only thing Defiant helps me versus is Defog Zapdos, which he's not bringing Defog Zapdos, and Seed Flare Spadef drops. As if I get a Defiant boost, that'd be like really, really cool. But yeah, I'm not going Defiant. I'm going Prankster, and I'm going Prankster Taunt. So the instances with Prankster Taunt, if I do leave with Thundurus is maybe going to be my lead. It really depends on his 6. If he leads off with his Oopsie, I'm probably going to lead off with Thundurus, just click Taunt and go from there. But I think if I lead off with Thundurus, I think it's incredibly obvious that I have Taunt. I don't know if he's going to counterplay around it, but I'm just going to play it mostly safe with Thundurus. Yeah, I'm just going to play it safe with Thundurus. Taunt on Thundurus also stops shenanigans from Scolpede. If Scolpede wants to set up spikes, sub Baton Pass, protect Baton Pass, I have Prankster Taunt, so it doesn't matter what speed you hit, I always get the Prankster and just taunt you from doing shenanigans. And Taunt also helps with Zapdos. By Thunderbolt is a 3 KO on Zapdos, so I Thunderbolt, or I Thunderbolt, I Taunt, I Thunderbolt, I Thunderbolt, so he can't roost up versus me. So yeah, Taunt's very, very good on that sense. And if you look at the speed stat, I hit 334. I'll tell you why. So you look at Infernape. Let's see, Infernape hits what number? 346. My Thundurus does not outspeed Infernape. I've already said Infernape is a must come, and I already said that Infernape, I don't have the best switch-ins to it. I'll go over why over everything. The thing is I can afford to run the speed stat. So if Infernape does not run, there's in theory 2 speed creeps that Infernape. So Infernape's either gonna run, max speed, or it's just gonna run 330. As my next fastest mon other than Thundurus is the Mew. So Infernape can just aggressively speed creep my Mew, as something like, Thundurus always naturally outspeeds Infernape. But the thing is if Infernape was a massive threat to the remainder of my 6, then I definitely would probably take out a little bit more special attack to put it in speed. But you'll see what I mean. But what he could do is he can invest a little bit in attack to help, take a hit maybe a little bit better from something like a Snorlax. It helps him with Flare Blitz recoil. So we'll see what a spread is or what a speed stat is post game or during the game. But it's not make it or break it if I do bring the speed stat. So I don't you can speed creep like this and predict your opponent's speed creep if you can afford your opponent going absolute max speed. As you'll see, my next mon is Zygarde. As not that Zygarde 50%. The set that I decided to bring, that I keep saying, you already seen Z move on Thundurus, so obviously I'm not Z Outrage, as I think that set's a little bit too predictable versus him. And I need an Infernape switch in, and Infernape does learn HP Ice, but I can live 1 HP Ice, and I can live 2 Choice Banded close combats, or Z move close combat and Choice Banded close combat does the exact same. So obviously I'm gonna have 1,000 arrows on here. So right now this is my Infernape switching, right? So to avoid Infernape from like dicking my team, and I need something to outspeed it, I'm gonna have Choice Scarf on my Zygarde, as this does a couple things for me. I could have had a, Yachi Berry Zygarde, a couple different Zygarde sets, but I decided Choice Scarf Zygarde is going to be very, very useful for me, as you already seen the EVs, and this helped me switch into 2 close combats after Stealth Rocks with Zygarde. I can live 1 HP Ice, and I 100% guarantee outspeed Infernape unless Infernape is Choice Scarf, and I knock him out with a 1000 arrows. So the next move that we have on here is actually 1000 Waves, as for whatever God knows reason, if he is lead Infernape, so if this Infernape is like, Stealth Rocks, Endeavor, lead Focus Sash, and this is his rocker for whatever reason, I outspeed, and I click 1000 Waves as he clicks Stealth Rocks. He's trapped as 1000 Waves traps your opponent from switching. I trap him and I outspeed him, and then I pretty much do a KO him. So if he wants to, lead off from Infernape and lead rocks, then I can punish that with 1000 Waves. But it's not only for that, it's for his Shaman, right? Shaman's obviously always going to switch him with Zygarde. Pretty obvious switching. So if you see my next mon being Mega Heracross, you're going to see why trapping it with 1000 Waves is going to be so important, because you can't pull a sneaky double with Shaman, and if Shaman doesn't have Air Slash, that grants a free switch in to Heracross, and obviously Heracross comes in on the HP Ice, comes in on the Leech Seed, comes in on the Seed Flare, and then I get a free Pin Missile the next turn. So that's why that 1000 Waves is there for, and it's there also for potentially trapping anything else if I need it to. Even trapping Scolipede, but that's a lot more situational. The next move that I have on here is Iron Tail. Obviously there for a Gardevoir, as I do outspeed the Gardevoir. So Choice Scarf also helps me not be so weak to timid max speed Gardevoir with Hyper Voice. And I decided my last move is going to be a little bit funky, very funky, as I'm Choice Scarf Dragon Tail. So this is only there because, as I mentioned, he could be set up Unkillable Uxie, set up Goodra, and I can just detail them out and kind of go from there. And I could also detail Shaman out. If I manage to get up spikes on Roserade, as you'll see Roserade is later on. I'll go on there when the road crosses, but spikes plus detail, especially if I kill the Gardevoir, is really going to punish him. So the next mon that I have is Mega Heracross. This is going to be Pin Missile, Rock Blast for the Zapdos, and Earthquake for the Toxapex and the Doublade. So this is a standard Heracross set, right? Max speed, or max bulk, max attack. Usually I run something like something very similar to this. This is around my normal spread, and I decided I'm gonna switch things up a little bit. This is the finals. We can't be predictable. I am bringing Jolly, almost max speed Heracross, and I'll go over the speed tier that I hit to, as if we went back to our notes and we saw what kind of Shaman that I predict him to bring. I know that he's aware of DD Zygarde with Outrage, and I know he knows that I can potentially 6-0 him if I play it correctly. So, that being said, I think he's going to be absolute max defense Shaman. That helps him versus banded Snorlax better. It helps him versus a lot of different things. So, even, max defense Shaman can also pivot into Celesteela and then, Leech Seed it and then go out to, Zapdos and, can do things like that. So, the speed stat is if he speed creeps. So this is more of a speed creeping for Zapdos. I already know Zapdos is probably going to run, way faster than any variant of Heracross can ever run. But you never know. As the bulk on Heracross literally does not matter. I'll show you. As if I run absolute max bulk on Heracross, like it doesn't do anything for me. So I'll show you. If he's Life Orb Dugtrio, if he's not Life Orb Dugtrio, I live in Air Lace anyway, and if he's banded or Life Orb, it kills me or it might kill me, and I'm pretty much down to. And if he gets up rocks, then I'm pretty much dead. Infernape, Flare Blitz, Gardevoir, Hyper Voice, Air Cutter, Specs Fire Blast that outspeeds me, Air Slash Shaman. You know, I already can live a hit from Scolipede. You know, I already can live hit from, you know, Doublade. I can avoid an Air Lace kill. So the bulk does not help me at all, and the speed can really come into play if he does not properly speed creep for this kind of Heracross. And Adamant on Heracross doesn't really help me either, as Pin Missile and Rock Blast kill any variant of Zapdos unless the Weird Berry Zapdos. And if I calc what if his Goodra is modest, I punish a lot of things, right? If he's modest Goodra, I outspeed with Heracross. If he's bulky Gardevoir and hardly any speed, I punish with Mega Heracross, etc., etc. I already know he's going to bring bulky Shaman, and the last move that I have is Swords Dance. Swords Dance is incredibly situational. I don't ever plan on actually clicking Swords Dance. Knockoff was the other potential set I was going to bring, because if he goes out in a Doublade, he could pivot out into Zapdos on the Earthquake, and Knockoff is a middle ground play, and Zapdos is probably going to be able to outspeed Heracross, but anyways, Swords Dance, if it's late game, it could potentially just win me the game. So I don't really need Knockoff, and Swords Dance just gives me a potential win. I don't expect to ever win with this, but it also, like, if he's in with Shaman that's revealed to not have Air Slash, I can just Swords Dance up versus it. If he's got Toxapex and Doublade in the back, that can, you know, then to a KO regardless if he has barrier or not. So that's kind of the idea. Speed stat is Zapdos could be potentially speed creeping, max speed, Volcanion, and this Heracross speed creeps Zapdos speed creeping Volcanion, and there's no point in running absolute max speed, because if Zapdos is running more speed than 266, he's going to be running, you know, more speed than 273. So that's kind of the idea with that. At least I get a, you know, tiny bit of bulk, maybe live a roll on something, but that's pretty much the idea on that. So the next mon that I decided to bring is going to be Roserade, as I think this is a pretty important role on this team too, specifically because one, he doesn't have the best of Roserade switch-ins, because I'm Technician, as you saw, HP Ground, and Hidden Power Ground, which is basically Earth Power with Technician and Sludge Bomb. His so basically his Sludge Bomb switch-ins are things like Toxapex, Muck, Doublade, basically whatever resists, you know, Sludge Bomb. It gets hit very hard from Sludge HP Ground, and HP Ground is actually Okos the Infernape too, so that's really good for me. And I might be able to catch the Infernape if he doesn't. If I've already shown Scarf Zygarde, he may not think that I'm Choice Scarf Roserade, and I could potentially use Roserade as a win con, just like this. If his only like Roserade switch-ins in theory are things like Goodra and Uxie, which it's not really that big of a deal, but if I don't use Roserade as a win con, I can use it for hazards, as I could run Sleep Powder, but I think there's a decent chance Goodra, I think it's a 50-50 chance that Goodra actually brings Sap Sipper, because Sap Sipper helps for Leech Seed Celesteela, and it also helps for Sleep Powder on Roserade. Could be Gooey too, but I didn't really want to make that risk, and if I get rid of his poison types, if he brings any poison types at all, That's going to be really good for me because basically Toxic Spikes are so good versus Shaman. Well, one, Rose Raid switches into a single Air Slash or a single... I mean, that'd be wild if he brought Psychic, but he could bring, you know... Rose Raid can live any single one hit from Shaman, threaten out the Shaman, and potentially get up Spikes or T-Spikes and kind of go from there. And Shaman does have Natural Cure, but if T-Spikes always stay up, it's always taking... Basically, Shaman's always status if I get up effectively Toxic Spikes. So, speed stat, first of all, I outspeed max speed Doug Trio, rest and special attack to ensure that, you know, Oko on Infernape and do... It doesn't... Well, it depends on Gardevoir. I may or may not kill the Gardevoir with Sludge Bomb, but yeah, I don't really need any bulk on Rose Raid, and I can run a little bit of bulk as I don't really need to run any more speed on that. So that's pretty much the idea with the Rose Raid. And because I don't want to auto lose versus Mega Gardevoir, let's use a Mega Gardevoir check. This is Trev's favorite set. This is something that if you watch my videos, if you watch the season of the NPL, you know what this set is. At least different variations of this set. This is the Zazo special, I guess, as I freaking love this set. As I'm not utilizing Mew to just like set up Calm Mind sweep, as I know the thing is Gypsy is a smart cookie, and he's not gonna let my Mew just set up Calm Minds and sweep his team, as he's really good at not getting swept. So Super Fang, Willow, Roost, Taunt. Let's look at it. Let's look at his team. Let's look back at Mew. So if I were to bring a Nasty Plot or a Calm Mind Mew, Swords Dance Mew, well, if I was like Nasty Plot, I'd probably bring like Earth Power and Ice Beam, as that hits his team pretty solid. But then again, his Gardevoir still kind of checks me, and I don't know. It's a decent set versus him, but I always feel like Gardevoir checks most variants of Mew, and if I'm Calm Mind, I'm probably going to be defensive, because if I'm not defensive, if I get any chip on me, then Infernape can just revenge my Mew. And if I go with something like this, Mew gives me a Dragon Resist, as Mew obviously is a Dragon Resist for my type charts. Super Fang hits everything on his team except for the Doublade, which I do have Will-O-Wisp for. This Mew beats his any variant of Muck, because if Muck is the Curse Rest set, I always Will-O-Wisp turn 1, as if he goes for a, you know, Curse, he goes for a Rest, he can't, because I can taunt it, and I can just Super Fang it down, as even if he's like Poison Touch, you know, obviously he gets a status on me, but, you know, knockoffs are only doing like 30%, and I just kind of, you know, just whittle down the Muck after I burn him and just kind of go from there. And the EVs on here, I avoided 2 KO from Gardevoir's Hyper Voice, which is very important because this is my main Gardevoir switch in, as everything else pretty much just like drops Gardevoir. This Mew can switch in, you know, Zapdos, Goodra, Shaman. As I said, it's my Dragon Resist, so hopefully he's Choice Specs and not Choice Banded, as, like, if he's Choice Banded Goodra, it's gonna be a long game. But if he's Choice Banded and Adamant, then at least I can outspeed him with a couple things, but you'll see, I got a little bit of counterplay. But, yeah, Mew, Infernape does wall my Mew in the sense of, you know, after I get an initial Super Fang, like I can't burn it or anything. But the thing is if he's Life Orb Infernape, he's taking Super Fang damage, he's taking Spikes damage from Rose Raid, and he's taking Life Orb damage. That pretty much kills Infernape in theory. So I have enough. If you notice, the speed creep on my Mew is for his Gardevoir, speed creeping and Adamant Zygarde. So Zygarde hits 289 speed if Adamant. Also the Zapdos, I also expect it to bring, you know, maybe like 290 speed to outspeed Adamant Zygarde, as I can, you know, bring 291 speed, as If I'm not, see the thing is if I'm not Adamant Zygarde, that's Dragon Dance, then I'm not going to be able to get enough damage output. So that's why I think he's going to speed creep for Adamant Zygarde, not Jolly. And two is I never brought Jolly Zygarde because I think the difference between getting the Okos between Adamant and Jolly are huge. So yeah, Jolly Zygarde. I don't really like that Jolly Zygarde to begin with. So anyways, yeah, if Gardevoir is timid, he cannot 2 KO this Mew. If Gardevoir is modest, I outspeed Gardevoir and go from there. So same thing with Zapdos, etc., etc. So that's the idea with all those. Mew does also outspeed Goodra, so Goodra's choice specs is doing lots of like 70% to Mew. But then I can just roost off the next turn. I'll be able to outspeed him, and his special attack loads from there. So the last Mon is the most interesting Mon. Is going to be the Snorlax. If you're still staying around, you'll see this is where things get fun. Let's just look at this. Let's look at his team. So defensively, what switches in a Snorlax? Doublade always 100% wall Snorlax. He's got Infernape to always revenge Snorlax, bar like if I set up like 4 or 5 curses. If I'm banded, he can avoid a 2 KO with Shaman. Maybe, yeah, probably Uxie, but Uxie doesn't have any recovery. And I think it does too, yeah, Snorlax does 2 KO Toxapex. So let's put a little bit of speed. Let's put 72 speed here as what this is going to allow me to do. First and foremost, you'll see what my set develops into, but speed stat outspeeds Toxapex and Doublade. I'm not sure. Maybe the day of the game, I might even put way more speed, but for right now, I'm pretty comfortable in 72 speed stat, as that's heavily speed creeping Doublades and Toxapex, and you'll see why it's very important. I'll outspeed those. My coverage moves is going to be Return and Earthquake, as that coverage hits his team for neutral damage. Everything for neutral damage. My EV spread is going to be 560 SpDef. This allows me to not get 2 KO'd by timid Hyper Voice Gardevoir after rocks. And yeah, so this is what we're looking at right now. So originally I was thinking like I kind of wanted to bring Choice Band and Choice Band and Snorlax, but the thing is Shaman can avoid it to a KO, and he can kind of play around Choice Band and Snorlax. If I did have something like Pursuit, I may Pursuit Trap Gardevoir if it's no bulk, but it doesn't even, like, Banded Pursuit doesn't even kill Gardevoir, even if he switches out, even if he has no bulk. So I didn't really like that option. I was looking, alright, well, I want a Snorlax that breaks his team, because I'm not bringing Trick Room, but I have a lot of Mons that can utilize his offense. So Gardevoir, if it's offensive, I have 2 Scarfers to beat his offense, and he doesn't have a lot of speed either, so he's got a lot of bulk, and because of that, I'm bringing Belly Drum. I don't have to worry about setting up to +6, worrying about Infernape's doubling in, as if I set up 1 Belly Drum. Infernape's got a hard switch in on the Belly Drum in order to capitalize on the Snorlax, which he may or may not do, as Infernape is such a good win combo to me. I'm not sure if he'd ever risk hard Infernape on the Snorlax, as when he could always revenge me. But the set that I was looking at first was Custat, and I was thinking about, what is it, Custat? Yeah, Custat. So I was thinking, alright, well, I get the Gluttony Custat, and I was thinking, alright, I'll just put on a Throw Move sub, as what this gives me is, we'll go over some other stuff, but if I'm Belly Drum with 8 EVs in attack, I OHKO everything after Belly Drum. And the thing is that'd be so huge for me, to set up a belly drum, and if I'm cussed at, because how it works is if it's, you know, Thunderous or one of my passive mons switch into, or Zapdos switches into them, I can switch into my Snorlax into a Zapdos, into my Shaman if it's defensive. I can switch into Snorlax onto one of his passive mons, Toxapex. Well, I don't really want it Scald Burn, but you get the concept. One of his fatter mons, I can, you know, take 20% from a T-Bolt or whatever, and I belly drum, and I have +1 priority for 1 turn, and I pretty much guarantee 1 kill. As this kind of Snorlax utilizes, I mean, this Snorlax is so good versus him because I take a single hit, I guarantee 1 kill, and I create momentum because he has to revenge me. So that's like a huge set. I thought that was going to be the set that was going to win me the game. But I decided that I'm going to change things up a little bit. I saw something that, like, Rizzy Powell ended up having a certain item on Snorlax, and today, well, the past couple of days, I've noticed that people use it in VGC, and that's a guava or whatever berry. It's a berry that recovers 50%, and I actually decided I'm gonna go recycle, as this might be an even deadlier set versus him. As one, I don't think he actually can play around the Cussat berry, because if I belly drum and then he tries to go out into whatever he, you know, whatever he wants to go out into, like let's say he goes out in the Dew Blade on the, you know, plus, like even if he goes out in the Dew Blade, like I pretty much guarantee a kill if I'm Cussat. But the thing is, if I'm a Guava Berry, I can do a lot more with this. So I can always switch in. I can switch into Gardevoir once. I can switch into Zapdos if I need to. I can switch it out into Shaman, just as a safe pivot, because he has a lot of coverage options for some of these mons. As you know, Snorlax, I can use it as a belly drum sweeper. I can use it as a pivot. I always can recycle. So even if I never use it as a pivot, I can use, you know, if it's Zapdos kills, you know, Zapdos kills Heracross, I next turn go out to Snorlax, I click belly drum, and I get a kill. And let's say he sacks off his Dew Blade or his Shaman, or, you know, sacks off his Zapdos or whatever, and then he goes Infernape. I go out into one of my mons, and then later I can bring back Snorlax to do the same thing again if he's got a lot of fat options, or I don't even have to belly drum again. I still keep it around, because what it does is I'm at 100%, I belly drum, I go to 50%, go back to 100% because of the berry. So the thing is that fucking Aki VGC ended up bringing this exact goddamn set versus him in a different league the same week that I faced Gypsy in finals. Like I've seen in VGC they use Curse, so belly drum is a lot stronger option, and I don't know, that really sucks that this set is not as mysterious versus him now. So I know if he sees Snorlax use the Guava Berry and he sees Recycle, I pretty much know that he knows that I have belly drum. It's like a guarantee. It's not the end of the world if he knows this set, as it's still, this set will be effective regardless if he knows this set or not. But it just really sucks that that he knows this set, because Aki BGC used it versus him. But it is what it is. I still think it's the strongest set versus him, and I think this is the strongest team versus him. I have a lot of strong mons. You know, the breakers. You know, between Heracross and Snorlax, this will break his like fat mons. I have double Scarfers to revenge his, you know, fast mons. Lure Thunderous, and you know, typical Mew that switches into everything. So that's the team. I don't know how it's gonna do versus Gypsy King. Hopefully it'll do good, and I hope you guys enjoyed this long ass team builder. It's probably like an hour long. Yeah, hour and 4 minutes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and until next time, have a beautiful day, and we'll see you in the finals. Peace.